Welcoming traveler. Get ready to level up in Dynasty football.
Hello and Happy New Year, everybody. Welcome to the RPG Fantasy Football Podcast. I am your Commissioner Corey, and I am joined by a couple of my special friends, Mike Hashuba and Evan Lowe. How you guys doing this evening?
Good, Corey. Good to be here. I've missed Evan dearly. It's been 2 whole weeks since I've seen him, so I just miss that big lovable face.
I was going to say, I'm working on growing out the facial hair so I can fit in with you guys.
Perfect.
You know, it's a couple weeks in progress here, but hopefully we'll get there.
It's coming in well, man.
I believe in you. Yeah, you'll definitely get there. Yeah, like you said, Mike, we've been off for a week. We had a little Christmas break. And it doesn't look like Eric will be joining us tonight, but that's okay because we have a very special friend as a replacement and a guest expert here. Joining us is Bradley Stouter from Player Profile. How are you doing, man?
I'm great. Thanks for the invite, guys. It's been awesome kicking off the new year, and y'all are my first 2024 podcast, so starting off with a bang. Let's go.
Boom. First the best. Isn't that how it goes? But thanks for joining us, man. Yeah, it's great to have you. Do you want to go ahead? I know Player Profiler is obviously on your resume, but before we really kick off, do you want to take a second and just, do you have anything you want to plug, anything you're putting out there that the people should know about?
Look, a lot of work on Player Profiler is really awesome. The guys there are crushing it. One of my roles there at Player Profiler is the news desk. I run the news desk. So if there's breaking news, one of the things on Player Profiler, if you guys haven't gone to playerprofiler.com, so many free things, so many data points for each of the players. But one of the things that has been added this year is the news tab. And so we've been updating that, and a lot of the analysts there are offering fantastic analysis, especially up to date, like within 24 hours. And that's going to be one of many things that we're going to be rolling out here at Player Profiler over the next couple months. There's a few other surprises that Player Profiler is going to be bringing out. Sorry guys, I'm not going to drop those, but just a little hint. So definitely check out Roto Underworld, the Twitter, obviously at Player Profiler NFL. You can also go to the YouTube channel. There's fantastic content, just a wide range of awesome creators there too. So the guys at Player Profiler has been crushing it. Matt Kelly, shout out to you, and Theo Greminger, Billy Muzio. Absolute studs in the fantasy football streets. So yeah, it's awesome being contributing and running the news desk, and the opportunities are awesome. So yeah, definitely check out Player Profiler, and those are the plugs.
That's great, man. Yeah, I've actually personally been a fan of Player Profiler for a long time. Kind of helped me get started with Dynasty Fantasy Football. Like, I discovered Player Profiler in and around the same time I started playing Dynasty. So really, really helpful tools. Definitely big shout out to you guys over there. The player comparisons specifically, I just love those. I think you guys do a great job on those. But yeah, with all of your credentials, man, I'm really excited for tonight's episode. We are going to be getting into some Dynasty wide receiver rankings, ranking these guys for the upcoming 2024 season. I think we're pretty much just going to stick with guys in the NFL already. I know Marvin Harrison is probably a guy we could slot in pretty highly on our rankings, but we're going to stick with guys that are already in the NFL and get into that a little bit later. But before we really kick off into that, I wanted to take a second because, New Year's was yesterday, guys. Happy New Year. I see a bunch of comments in the chat. It's awesome. Thank you, everyone, for checking us out and hanging out with us tonight. But I want to know from the panel here and the people in the comments, too, if you want to shout it out. New Year's resolutions, guys. Let's do this. Does anyone have any that they want to pop off on? I'll do a little anti-clockwise thing going here, and I'll start with Mike. Mike, do you want to go?
Yeah, I would love to. My New Year's resolution is to get in worse shape and be a bigger nerd. That way, at the end of the year, if I'm in good shape, that's great. I crushed it. And if I'm in bad shape, I kept my New Year's resolution for the first time in years. So win-win.
Okay, the getting worse shape thing, it feels a little too easy. But the bigger nerd thing is interesting. How are you going to go about that? What do you have any
Yeah.
nerd plans?
So I've already created a campaign for Dungeons and Dragons for one of my friends to run through. So I'm excited about that. I have a Lego Star Wars Commander Cody helmet that I'm putting together that if you guys follow me on Twitter, you saw the start of that. I'm just really embracing all of the things that bring me joy. And a lot of the things that bring me joy are the same things that brought me joy when I was 10. So let's get it.
All the power to you, man. That's awesome. That's right up my alley. Okay. What about you, Evan? You got something good up your sleeve for this year?
Yeah. So as you guys know, I work an awful lot here, especially now that I've been put on the Titan Stadium project for the city over here. So it's a lot of fun, but I need to travel more. And my girlfriend wants to get to all of the national parks. So I'm really going to try and make a concerted effort to actually take a little bit of time off work on the weekends, make some 3-day weekends out of it, be able to travel a little bit more.
Nice, man. I know it's far away, but if you ever come up to the Pacific Northwest, Washington has some really great national parks. I would love to chat with you more about that at some point. But yeah, that's great, man. You deserve it. You deserve some time off, man. But what about you, Bradley? You got anything you're trying to do this year?
Instead of New Year's resolutions, I'm thinking of New Year's affirmations.
I like
that
it. Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to go in and not just like affirm myself and all of the things that I do well, but also affirm other people more and just look for the positivity and the ways in which people are winning their lives and let them know that like I'm seeing that, because sometimes we go about our lives and we don't notice that we're crushing it in certain ways, or like, oh, this is just how I do things. But like, actually, like you're doing an amazing job and you should know that. So I think that that's one of the things that I'm looking to level up this year is affirmations for other people.
I love that. That's very great. Yeah, that's awesome, man. I love you spreading the wealth like that.
Yeah.
Giving people some affirmations. That's nice. Well, mine's kind of ethereal. Like, you know, I didn't really try to make it super specific because mine is basically just stop worrying so much. I tend to do that with stuff that doesn't really need to be worried about. And so my focus this year is going to be, if it's out of my control, I'm not going to worry about it. And I think that everyone can stand to do that a little bit, because I think a lot of people have issues with that, where they get upset over things or get stressed over things that are outside of their control. And, you know, speaking from my experience, it has definitely affected me at certain points in my life. So I'm going to try to let things kind of fall off my back, like water on a duck's back. And, you know, we'll see how that takes me through the year, but I'm excited for it. I think 2024, look, I mean, we're a couple years removed from the start of the pandemic, which I think was crazy for everybody involved. And I think that hopefully, you know, in the next few years here, things will get a little more stable, a little more fun, being able to go out and do things. So I'm looking forward to 2024, and I'm excited for all of you guys in the chat and my panel here for joining me on the first show of 2024.
Yeah, shout out to the chat. They've been exploding. So
yeah, look at them go, man. I love it. Yeah, I really like the stop eating so much fast food from Richard, because I have been there as well. Have cut out a lot of Taco Bell and Domino's from my life that I think I am better served for. Yeah, be a duck. Yeah, heck yeah, man. I think that's great. I think that's going to be my mantra for the year. But okay, yeah, let's what do you guys say? You feeling nice and warm? Get into some football talk, maybe?
Yeah, let's hit it.
Real quick, I like the shout out from Drew too. Get a writing gig that pays well enough so I don't have to pander to social media for views. I feel it, brother. I believe in you. You can do it.
Sharing articles in those Reddit streets.
Yeah. Yep. I've been there with Mike trying to post his articles. Just be like, yo, give my boy some follows. But okay, yeah, let's get into a little bit of football talk. Like I said, first things first, unless you are in one of those weird leagues that has championships week 18 of the NFL. Looks like, Bradley, you're at least in one of them, or is that the major? Okay, one. Okay. I feel like that's not too uncommon, where there's that one outside league that randomly just has that going on. It's a little rough with the inactives, I'm sure. So good luck to you, sir, on that.
Waivers run tonight, so wish me luck.
I'm pulling for you, man. Good luck. Mike Zimmerlin, yeah, I like that shout out too. Although go Huskies. Just have to put that out there. Get into that a little bit later, but so yeah, championships more or less are over. Congratulations if you won, especially if you won an RPG league. Because yeah, there was a lot of there's actually a lot of like triple winners, like winners of 3 different leagues in there. Like so, shout out to Frank. I don't know if you watched this, Frank, but shout out for winning I think 3 RPG leagues this year. Very, very impressive. But yeah, other than that, I mean, last little shout out to everyone that locked up that 101. Because you know it's better than not having the 101, right? Going into a year where you've earned it. But besides that, yeah, I mean, like really quickly, like I said, I just said Michael Penix, and I kind of want to take a little bit of time.
Go ahead. Let it out.
I mean, he looked absolutely surgical, man. Go Huskies. Yeah. Huge Huskies fan. I know, Mike, the Longhorns are your second favorite team, right? Or first favorite team that's actually relevant?
Yeah, go Hokies. They have my heart and soul. But like, I mean, brother-in-law, I traded a Steelers fandom for him for a Texas fandom for me. So,
hey, I mean, it was a great game, right? It's not like the Longhorns got blown out or anything, but Penix was surgical. I love to see it from him. Rome Odunze was a man amongst boys. I think he's moved up. Like if we were doing rookie wide receiver rankings right now, I think he's my second guy after Marvin Harrison. But again, you know, Huskies bias. So I get if that's not everyone's bag. But yeah, and other than that, I mean, I honestly have been kind of tuned out to news since championships in fantasy football have been over. But we do have a news expert here with Bradley. I don't know if you have any news that you want to shout out real quick off the top of your dome, but
off the cuff.
I mean, we all know that Christian McCaffrey is going to be out week 18. So if you are playing week 18, that is massive news, number one. Number two is that in his absence in week 17, it was Elijah Mitchell, not Jordan Mason, who had been the running back 2 for the majority of the season. It was Elijah Mitchell, not Jordan Mason, who was getting the carries. So if you're making a waiver priority, the most logical one and the one that is most likely to hit is going to be Elijah Mitchell in week 18, not Jordan Mason. I mean, you can pick up Jordan Mason because maybe there's a rotation. Maybe it's Elijah Mitchell who gets hurt because he has a tendency to, you know, get hurt. But, you know, if I'm prioritizing a San Francisco running back, it's going to be Elijah Mitchell.
Yeah, I feel that. I am actually very sad because on a large majority of my redraft teams, I had Elijah Mitchell just riding the bench pretty much the whole season just in case Christian McCaffrey got hurt. And it took until the very last game where, of course, I didn't play Elijah Mitchell for it to happen. But yeah, week 18, Elijah Mitchell, I have to imagine if he's not rostered, he is by far the hottest pickup on the waiver wire. So good shout out. Okay, well, anything else, or should we get into some wide receiver rankings, boys? There's a lot of them.
I did my Dynasty wide receivers article recently, and I tell you what, there's like 45 or 50 wide receiver 3s. So that's unfortunate.
Yep. So the way we usually do this is I just have this tier maker list. It's still, you know, rankings, but we're going to go in like person to person order, and you basically can just shout out a guy that you think belongs in whichever tier in whichever order. So, you know, I kind of want to give it up to the guest here, Bradley, and not put you on the spot, but who's your number one wide receiver in Dynasty right now, man?
It has to be CeeDee Lamb.
Let's go.
It's CeeDee Lamb this year. 80% of his weeks he finished with 12.5 half point PPR points or more, but he also had 26.5% at top 5 wide receiver. And we just saw, yes, recency bias, blah, blah, blah. He exploded. No, but like he had been crushing this year already. And then he delivers in the fantasy playoffs. His youth is there. Dak Prescott, they're already talking about an extension. He's got quarterback stability. He is the alpha on the team. He gets hyper targeted. This is the wide receiver 1 because of the questions we have among the other wide receivers, and also, the ceiling that he can access that we've seen. So give me CeeDee Lamb number 1 overall.
I mean, I think that's a strong argument. I know Mike believes that as well. He recently, you came out with your wide receiver rankings article, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, and I mean, look, tied to a great QB in a system that uses him as that focal point on the offense, young, electric, red zone threat. Like, what? I don't know what more you want here. I think that
this is
the other
Devontae Adams, peak Devontae Adams right now.
Yeah, I think the other guys that were like in the argument here with Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson, I feel like we've seen the reasons why not this season. Where Jamar Chase has a T. Higgins counterpart, and also there's the Joe Burrow injury that I'm sure contributed that you can't really count on, but I think will still linger in dynasty managers' minds. And then Justin Jefferson, who's throwing him the football. We saw a crazy rotating cast of QBs for him this year, and look, CeeDee Lamb overcomes both of those. He's much more safe, in my opinion. So I think I'm right there with you guys. I don't see a reason why he shouldn't be the number 1 wide receiver in Dynasty. I know the top 3 in this person order agrees. Evan, any differing opinions?
As the resident Eagles fan who hates everything Cowboys, it pains me very, very deeply to unfortunately have to agree.
Ooh, wow. Consensus.
So,
Wow.
Yeah, it pains me. It's like a stab in the heart. But whatever. We'll move on. We'll keep it going.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm actually surprised that we all agree. I know your hate for the Cowboys, Evan. But yeah, I think it's just too clear of a picture. And I think this is where it gets a little more muddy, because I think the Dynasty wide receiver 2 is like a little more tough to pin down. I think it could be 3 guys kind of interchangeably, but we'll just keep going down and then back up. So Evan, if you want to nominate the second guy, go for it, man.
Well, considering the second and the third guys, and I'm just going to take this right here because they're both interchangeable. Chase and Jefferson.
Yeah.
Yep.
One, you have the QB question mark with, is Kirk Cousins going to be back? He's been hyper targeted every single time. TJ Hawkinson's probably going to miss the first half of the season next year. So it's going to mean more targets for him. It's probably going to mean more targets for Addison and whoever the quarterback is there. Chase is going to be getting Joe Burrow back, which is his college teammate. We know the connection that they've had. If T. Higgins leaves, vacated targets, do more go to Chase? I don't know. I really don't know that answer. I mean, I think it's going to allow teams to key in on Chase more if T ends up leaving. But, who knows what's going to happen in the offseason. We're not here to speculate too much. But I think it's a pretty clear top 3 at this point.
That is tough between the two. If you had to choose one or the other two, I agree with you. It's pretty flip-floppy. Both have kind of their pros and cons. Is there anyone that feels super strongly about one of them being the 2 and one of them being the 3, or is it pretty much, seems like we all agreed?
I think it's Jefferson clearly at 2 and then Chase at 3. We've seen the floor for Chase just be so much scarier, even without the injuries.
Yeah.
And, the reality is too, we love the spike weeks from Chase and we've seen the high variance, but he's not had a consistently mid consistent producing, level of production over the last couple of years, even with a healthy Joe Burrow. So I think that it is Lamb and then Jefferson and then Chase. I think more firmly for me.
That's a good point too. I mean, Jamar Chase, looking back, he does explode. He does have a little bit scary of a consistency track record. Meanwhile, Justin Jefferson, there's very rarely a week where he's not going to put up 10, 12 points for you. So I can dig that. Cool. Well, we got the top 3 out of the way. And Mike, I'm pretty sure I know your 4, but surprise me maybe.
Yeah. I think there's only one more person that fits in this tier. And I think it's the person that is second in the league in receptions right now. It's Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Yes.
If he had the draft capital to back it up, he would clearly be in this tier. The only reason is because there are still people holding on to the draft capital argument, and that should be completely out the window. He is the alpha in the offense. He's tied in a pass-happy system, in a good system that scores well in a dome. he checks all of the boxes that you could ever want, down to even where he plays. So I'm all on board with Amon-Ra in the top tier.
I like it. Yep. That I was already I actually misplaced this, but my bold prediction from the beginning of the season was that Amon-Ra would be the consensus Dynasty wide receiver 3. I think looking at this list, I probably agree that I just missed the mark on that. I do think that he sits really well at this number 4 slot. And honestly, the guy that I would be like, I could have a conversation about maybe taking his place, but truly, I do think that he belongs in the next tier. But right up there with like a borderline kind of selection, I think it's AJ Brown. I think it's consistency. Like there were some weeks where like he really didn't do the thing that you wanted him to do as your wide receiver 1 on your team. He's a little older than all of these guys, which isn't too much of a knock. He's still got plenty of years left on his wide receiver lifespan. But I still think that he breaks games open. He's tied to a great QB. We'll see what happens when the brotherly shove gets eliminated, but I don't really think that'll affect AJ Brown too much. So I think that he fits in pretty good here. Evan, as the Eagles guy, do you think this is right? Do you think he's a tier below because of like age and what I've said, or do you think he belongs in that top tier?
No, I think it's very fair. You look at the slight regression for that offense this year, and it is somewhat concerning. You look at Smitty being the very clear 1B in that offense and having his games. You look at Goddard, who's going to be healthy. You look at the way that they use their running backs in that system. Yes, it has changed slightly this year. The offensive line theoretically will be taking a step back next year when Kelsey likely retires. So I think it's very fair to put him there. I'm going to make the argument, though, for Amon-Ra to also be in that tier and drop Amon-Ra out of the first tier. And I'm going to base most of that on his ADOT and his air yard share. So you look at his ADOT and it's less than 8. You look at his air yard share, and it's, I think, just at 30%, just barely. There's a ton of other receivers on top of him. So for Amon-Ra, you are just banking on pure volume.
But he earns the pure volume.
He does earn the pure volume. I agree. We're also accounting on Jared Goff continuing to stay a very efficient quarterback.
Fair.
Yep. I think with his O-line, he will be. But I do agree that is what it depends on. Because Jared Goff with protection is great. Jared Goff without protection is not great.
Yep.
So I hear you. Okay. Well, that was my AJ Brown pick. Let's go to Bradley next. Bradley, who you want to shout out?
Yeah, let's shout out Puka Nacua.
Yes.
Let's get him in this tier, in this A tier. I mean, this is a guy who it all made sense though, right? The Rams were dying for a wide receiver too, and they were trying Van Jefferson, no. Ben Skoranek, no. Like these guys were just not
Tutu
it.
Atwell.
Tutu Atwell, right? They're taking shot after shot of trying to find a complementary piece to Cooper Kupp in this Rams offense. And then you look at, I mean, I tweeted out about Puka Nacua back in March, and I was like, hey, like, we should be paying attention to this guy because
nice.
His PFF grade was really good. There were a lot of other measures. Yards per route run were respectable. And it was a BYU program. BYU isn't like Coastal Carolina, like there's at least some recognition of that name.
Mm-hmm.
And even though Jaron Hall, maybe this is more of like what was holding back Puka Nacua in college was Jared Hall, right? And so this guy who is really well graded gets a 5th round. I thought he would get a higher draft capital, but he immediately comes out, wins this number 2 job pretty quietly, and is an instant mega producer with Cooper Kupp out. So being 22 years old and setting rookie records, how are we not going to rank him in this type of tier where, I mean, who are you going to take? An aging Stephon Diggs? Like, sorry, like it's going to be Puka Nacua on an offense tied to Matthew Stafford, who has historically been able to put up gaudy wide receiver numbers like Calvin Johnson, Megatron sets wide receiver receiving records, and Cooper Kupp, right? This is Cooper Kupp plus Robert Woods together in this one man. Puka Nacua, give me in the A tier, and he could make it into the elite tier by the time, this summer happens and the hype continues.
I hear you. I mean, question one, like how much longer can Cooper Kupp do it? Right? Like he's 30 now, I believe, has already had, a severe injury last year, a couple injuries this year. We'll see how long he can do it. I mean, Puka Nacua will eventually, I think, become that clear-cut wide receiver one for the Rams. I actually had the joy of, because I'm a Seahawks fan, week 1 against the Rams at home, Puka Nacua over 100 yards in his first NFL game ever, and I got to bear witness to Puka Nacua. And let me tell you, I am just so happy that he is actually really, really good, and that it wasn't a one game off thing that happened. So it makes me feel a little less bad that he absolutely shredded us. But yeah, I think you made all the good points about him. We'll see how long Matthew Stafford can do it also, but he's looked great this year, so I don't see why it would stop anytime super soon. So yeah, I think this is a good pick.
Were also rumblings in the mid-season when Kupp was dealing with the injuries that Kupp may retire very soon, and he'll be 31, at the start of next season. But I mean, that is another concern, that he just up and goes, and then who's next? Tyler Higbee in the target share, right? So
yeah,
Puka Nacua, there is an upside pathway to 35+% target share in a Sean McVay, Matthew Stafford Rams offense next year.
I like it. Okay. Let's keep going. Let's keep trucking. Evan, you got a guy to nominate here?
Yeah, I'm going to nominate a guy that's been absolutely buried by awful O-line play and awful quarterback play. And we're going to go with G-Dub.
Yep.
I mean, look, Rodgers has come out and said that he wants to play 2 more years. If you tell me he's going to have 2 years of high efficiency Aaron Rodgers, you're going to have the Jets, who are going to try and do everything they can to make that offense better, knowing that Rodgers is coming back, knowing that they've already tried to do everything they can this season, and the quarterback play is just awful. You top that with the fact that he's at 160 plus targets this year already. I mean, he's a target monster. You look at last year and how many targets he had, the amount of targets he's having this year. I mean, if you continue to put 150 plus targets up, you're going to have a chance at being a wide receiver 1, and a high wide receiver 1 if he continues to get those touchdown numbers up, because they continue to be suppressed. 3 touchdowns this year. Come on.
Okay. Yeah, I hear you. I think I have maybe maybe 1 or 2 guys I would say I would want over Garrett Wilson on this list. But I hear you. Aaron Rodgers, if he does come back from this Achilles tear and can be Aaron Rodgers and give him 2 good years, I think that investment is well worth it. That's the risk, though, right? If he doesn't, if the Achilles tear is actually hindering his performance and Aaron Rodgers isn't Aaron Rodgers anymore, that could be a little bit of a scary investment for that high up. But I do hear you. He is incredibly talented. I think maybe a possible guy that you can get a little cheaper if you find someone that doesn't believe in the Aaron Rodgers comeback and on kind of a downish year. So I still think he's young enough. I can dig it.
Look, and I'm also going to point out he has a 45% air yard share for that team. That's an insane amount. Obviously, yeah. I get it. There's really nobody else to throw to on that team. It's hyper-targeted. Everything's focused into him. Besides Breece Hall, one of the best pass-catching running backs.
Could you imagine if the Jets had just kept Joe Flacco? Come on, man.
Cool Joe. Dude, he's perfect for Cleveland. You got to leave those Brownies alone. Making the playoffs for the 3rd time, right?
Could have been G-Dubs with a 250-yard game instead of Amari Cooper. But okay, cool. Let's keep trucking along. Mike, next name here, bud.
I don't want to give a name. I want to ask a question to Bradley. Okay. If the wide receiver 8 was 26 years old, would you put him in this tier?
26.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, DJ Moore.
That you were reading my mind, Mike, because I was going to nominate DJ Moore into this team.
Best case scenario, he continues with Justin Fields and they build the team as an offense as a whole. They bring in some creative play callers. We stop seeing a million screens that, everyone sees what they're doing.
Mhm.
Worst case scenario, he gets Caleb Williams and an upgrade, presumably a quarterback. Like there is no downside. And this is going to get clipped later when DJ Moore has something bad happen to him, but there is no downside. Give me DJ Moore in the same tier.
Only 26 for DJ Moore is crazy, right?
He's been in the league since 1993.
It really feels that way. It really does.
He was drafted when he was 12.
It felt like he was in like a hyperbolic time chamber on the Panthers where like it was infinite and he would never escape, but then he did.
Him and McCaffrey.
Yeah, for sure. That's so true. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I'm a huge DJ Moore fan. I think his run after the catch is elite. I think he can definitely be a focal point for whatever QB is on the Bears next year. Resident hater of DJ Moore, Evan, how do you feel about this top 8 selection?
Yeah, resident hater because used to be resident believer, and you get really sour and salty.
Got out just in time.
When you continue
I
to
remember
get out
when we started this podcast, I had an in-depth conversation with Evan about how much we both loved DJ Moore. And then like 8 months went by and we had another podcast where Evan was like, I hate DJ Moore, it stinks.
But yeah,
So
okay.
funny.
Well, like I totally get it. You're looking at a guy that's getting almost 30% of the target share. He's getting the targets downfield. He's getting the air yards on top of it. He's the very clear wide receiver 1 in that offense. If they bring in a very clear wide receiver 2 or somebody to challenge him, you could see a reduction in his total profile, total output, which I think is a little concerning with the limited passing ability of Justin Fields if he ends up staying, which the way the team's been looking, I think he very well could be the quarterback next year. And if anybody wants to take a water bet on that, I will gladly take a water bet on Justin Fields as a starting quarterback for the Browns next year. Not the Browns, the Bears.
I'll take that he's not the starting quarterback for the Browns.
Yes, sorry. Yeah, the Bears.
For the Bears, how many games are we saying? Like if he plays one snap week 1, that's
he will be the starter when the season starts.
I don't disagree, to be honest.
I'll take the bet. I'll take the bet.
All right.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a deal.
Right. We'll get that on the water bet Twitter a little later.
Yep. Eric, if you're listening at home.
Yeah. So this is where it gets hard. I really believe that. I mean, there's still like some really quality guys here, but I think this top 4 is looking really nice. I pretty much agree in lockstep with most of these where they are selected. I'm going to enter a little bit of a wild card, I think. And it's going to be a guy that I personally won a water bet betting on this season and tied to an elite young quarterback and is still young enough to keep getting better. I'm going to do it. I'm going to take Nico Collins, guys.
Why are you our moderator, Corey? I'm
going to take him. And I think, look, I'm not going to put him in this top 8 tier. I'm going to put him in the tier below. But I want Nico Collins.
So I can breathe a little bit is what you're telling me.
Yeah, no, I'm not putting him in the same.
I still want to strangle you through the screen.
That's fine. That's fine. But I believe that Nico Collins is only going to get better. He was already the wide receiver 18 with some missed weeks this year, with some missed CJ Stroud weeks. The connection's only gets stronger, guys. He's the wide receiver 1 on the Texans with CJ Stroud, who's breaking rookie record. I don't see why it's not Nico Collins, but you guys can yell at me if you'd like.
Look, in the weeks before Tank Dell got hurt, Mike and I were winning our water bet.
I know.
Yep, but what did I say? What did I say was the reason why I was separating Nico Collins and Tank Dell? Do you remember what the reason was?
Yeah,
size and
potential.
Yeah.
That he would get injured. And that is exactly what happened.
Well,
Give me Tank Dell. Give me Tank Dell over Nico Collins. He was going to be my next pick anyways.
I'm with Bradley.
Put them next to each other because we don't know. And they're both great.
Yeah. I'll put them next to each other.
Okay, in games played this year, Tank Dell has a higher rate of top 5 weeks and a higher rate of weeks of 12.5 fantasy points or more, and that includes the 2 or 3 games he left early. And so, yes, the injuries are there, Like, sure, this kid is like 5'6", 150 if you like fill him with water, you know, but the dynamism that exists for a player like that, and we're talking rankings, like the value for Tank Dell is so much lower than this ranking, and that's why there's this is the edge. Like if you can get Tank Dell for and plus a significant asset for a Chris Olave, you make that move. Like that's the type of thing.
Have an important question for anybody that would like to answer. Do we just not care that he literally broke his leg? Because like Tony Pollard broke his leg, we all heard it was going to be fine, and then he clearly looked slower. Now we have a rookie who's missing time during their biggest, most important part for their development, and this is giving time for Nico and CJ to grow their chemistry. Like, there's only one guy that can sit with the quarterback at breakfast, and it looks like it's Nico for now.
Well, that's all baked into my argument personally. Like he is going to be the guy going forward, possibly into the playoffs, possibly a couple games into the playoffs. Look, his Nico Collins has elite prototypical size, and I think that is what is going to matter down the stretch between these two guys. I think Tank Dell is awesome. Not to detract from Tank Dell at all. I think he's a great player, but exactly what I thought would happen because he's a small guy. He's going to get hurt. He's not ever going to have a season where he plays 17 games, guys. I just think Nico Collins, he's going to be the stronger contributor on the team week after week going into 2024. But I hear you guys. I really do. I get the conversation for sure.
But bottom line, they're both great. Brad, we put Tank up there already. Do you want to give another nomination?
Brandon Ayuk isn't even 26 yet.
I love it.
Yeah. Brandon Ayuk needs to be up there. Like, still underrated, still undervalued. This guy's been crushing it. When everyone else in San Francisco has also been crushing it, he's been proving that he's still the wide receiver one. Like, the argument is for Debo that, oh, well, Debo will get the rushing stuff. He's not the wide receiver one. He's not the first read. He's not the downfield. And that's the difference between Jimmy Garoppolo and Brock Purdy. Purdy is willing to go deeper and hit the sidelines versus Jimmy Garoppolo, who we know his accuracy issues. We know the precision issues and his unwillingness to throw deep. Like, the arm strength just was not there for Garoppolo. This is a difference-making quarterback for a player like Brandon Ayuk. I mean, you could even see him sneaking into that A tier. I'm not opposed to that, but I think this is a fine ranking for him. And I think he's still undervalued in the dynasty streets. So give me some Brandon Ayuk.
Yeah, for Debo, for me, it almost feels like Debo is more in, like, he's the second most important offensive weapon for the team, like the NFL team, but not the second most valuable offensive player on the 49ers. I think that's Brandon Ayuk after Chris McCaffrey. So yeah, I really like it. He was a breath of fresh air this year for sure, where you got him in startups and stuff. So I'm right with you there. Okay, Evan.
Yeah, I'm gonna give the last two names to try and finish out this tier, and I'm gonna make the argument that it stops right after this in Olave and Tyreek.
Okay.
So you look at Tyreek, you expect him to have one, potentially two more seasons. I'm going to say two, tied with Tua for the most part. They haven't obviously picked up his fifth-year option, so you don't quite know. But you're fully expecting Tua to be the quarterback. Jalen Waddle is 100% the wide receiver too. You look at the target share that Tyreek's been getting in every single week that he's been playing. He's the Paul Pierce of the NFL right now. He's hobbling off the field after every play, and he's just hobbling back on and continuing to make plays. And then you look at Chris Olave and the intended air yards that he has. It's very clear they're trying to push the ball downfield to him. They're trying to get him the ball on top of everything. I think Chris Olave is fifth in intended air yards this year.
Okay. Yeah. I think the only pushback I have is I think there's one more guy in this tier that, yeah, I don't know if anyone will agree with me, but other than that, yeah, I mean, Chris Olave is great. As long as Tyreek Hill is playing football, he is a top 12 finisher, easy, probably a top 6 finisher with some comfortability. So yeah, I don't mind those two guys in that B tier. Looking at the B tier, I might shuffle it a bit. I honestly think I have Brandon Ayuk. I probably misspoke, and I think I have Brandon Ayuk at the top of my B tier personally. But I think that as it is pretty good. So let's keep trucking. Mike, you got a guy?
I have one more for this tier. Actually, two more, but I'm willing to.
Yeah, I think I
one.
solidly have one, possibly two. But let's go ahead and give what you got.
I think I know who you're gonna say, so I'm gonna go with the other one. If we like Chris Olave because we think his situation is going to get better, don't we also like Jalen Waddle, who we think their situation is going to get better? And like Jalen Waddle is certified good at football and plays in a system that works to his strengths. Like, if we are going to put Olave where he is, I think Waddle needs to be next to him. But that's
okay.
You can also put him down a tier. I'm not going to die on this hill, but that's just my food for thought.
I think I have him down a tier. He's not one of the guys that I would have had up here personally. I honestly, and this is maybe a thing that you guys just need to enlighten me about, because personally speaking, I don't have any Waddle. I have 30 dynasty leagues. I don't have a single share of Waddle. It just feels like he gets injured too much.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if that's fair to say. Personally, it just seems like that from an outside perspective. You guys can correct me, but I don't know. I don't think he's put it all together yet. So I have a little hesitation putting him up against the guys in the B tier that have shown like true like matchmaker winning potential. So
we can bump it down one. I'm not emotionally tied to Waddle.
I think I will, unless anyone's very strong with him.
I think you moved down Jalen Waddle. He was wide receiver 39 this year in rate.
Yeah, he kind of killed you.
Weeks. Like he was certifiably bad in some weeks, and that's aside from the injuries, you know. And so here's some fun. I just pulled up. Kendrick Bourne had a higher rate of flex weeks. Okay. Rashee Rice, DeAndre Hopkins, Romeo Dobbs.
I mean, Kendrick Bourne is elite, so that's not fair.
Jacoby Myers, you know.
I'm curious, how does Olave look?
Yeah.
In that.
Let me pull up Olave. Olave this year, wide receiver 9 in rate of flex weeks.
Dang.
But 0% top 5 and 0% top 10.
Yep.
Because he's limited by the quarterback.
The Derek Carr factor.
Yeah.
So he's an extremely high floor, very low ceiling type of wide receiver.
I mean, Olave's had six weeks this year that he's had over 10 targets. Waddle's had 2.
If you put Tyreek Hill next to Olave, we can move on after this. But if you put Tyreek Hill next to Olave would not have 10 targets.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong. I don't think you're wrong on that. I still think Waddle's very talented, but the fact of the matter is Tyreek Hill is there and will be there.
So Derek Carr.
And it's Derek Carr. Hey, you mean Andy Dalton?
Jameis Winston. Hashtag King Jameis.
Please free Jameis.
Mike, were those the Carfax?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Well, so my vote for it's my turn, right? Yeah. My vote for still continuing into the B tier, and maybe the last guy in the B tier was going to be DK Metcalf. I still think that he has game breaker ability. He had a nice 3 touchdown game this year. He's I mean, the thing is the Seahawks aren't very good. That's just like the fact of the matter. As a Seahawks fan, I can say that pretty confidently. But DK Metcalf is the guy that they go to in the last 5 minutes of the game when they need to try to win finally, after not trying to win seemingly the entire game. So I still really like DK's talent and ability, and I think he's young enough to keep contributing on the team. I think Tyler Lockett is probably, like, not to pun, but I don't think he's a lock to be on the roster. Like, he might be a retire candidate with his age and how little he contributed this year. So I'm looking at DK as the last guy in the B tier, or, you know, I will consign to the top of the C tier if you guys feel strongly about it. But
yeah, DK should be in the C tier. He's underperformed a 5% rate of top 5 weeks, wide receiver 27 in rate of flex weeks. So he's underperformed this year. He seemingly underperforms his ADP every year. He's like the anti-Tyler Lockett.
Like that. Cool. Okay.
Sorry. So, you know, if you can get DK Metcalf or trade him away for the perceived market value that he has. Like, he's a dude. I think he's maybe better in real life than he is for fantasy.
Mm-hmm. I feel that. Okay. That's okay. I feel it. Great. Well, let's keep trucking. Bradley, you got one?
There's one that's missing in I'm looking versus the consensus rankings, and Devonta Smith is one that we just can't be missing. And while I'm not a huge Devonta Smith fan, putting him in we got to put him in the C tier. I think that's fine. But clearly multi-tiers below AJ Brown. There's been arguments for, Devonta Smith is the Slim Reaper and he's crushing. And a lot of that happened last year with Dallas Goedert out and happened this year with Dallas Goedert out. He becomes the 1B when another piece is missing, but he himself cannot push over AJ Brown. And so, a player who does get a 22% target share and does have his explosive weeks is valuable, but in the same way that a Jalen Waddle or a DK Metcalf, a Devonta Smith fits that similar tier of wide receiver that we're looking at. So, I think this is a fine place for him.
I actually agree. And I think what it comes down to is the C tier is almost becoming the guys you felt good about having as your wide receiver 2 before this season. Mm-hmm. And now you're if you have them as your flex, you're okay, at least I have them as my flex. But if you were planning on them being your wide receiver 2 consistently in 2023, I think you're pretty disappointed. Okay, so let's have Smitty in that C tier and get down to Evan.
Yeah, so I mean, this is where we start to kind of see a little break, in my opinion. I think you can make the argument still for Stephon Diggs as long as he doesn't leave Josh Allen. I think you can make the argument for Pittman if he stays, because Shane Steichen is a fantastic play caller.
I'm pro Pittman right now.
So, I mean, I would honestly be fine with making a case for either one of those guys. So I'll try and make the case for both of them. Stephon Diggs here continues to put up numbers year in and year out. You're getting a discount on him. I mean, I think most people, if you look at him, are valuing him as a low-end wide receiver 2 right now in Dynasty rankings. If you're going for it and you're trying to win, he's still producing. Yeah, the end of the season should be able to get you a discount, though. The end of the season was rough. Don't get me wrong. But the end of the season should be able to get you a discount on a guy who still has multiple years left on his legs as a top-end wide receiver. He's going to be a wide receiver 1, even if he leaves Buffalo. He's going to get the targets as he consistently has. Right now, he has Josh Allen. So that's one of the best quarterbacks in football, throwing in the ball. Pittman has Shane Steichen, who is an incredible play caller. If you've listened to him talk about how he does plays, how he comes up with them, how he runs his system, fantastic. If he stays in Indy and he gets that contract with Anthony Richardson coming back and taking some pressure off of that passing game, could be huge.
I really like the Diggs shout out. Just value alone, I think you nailed it, because the last 4 weeks were brutal. Didn't get above I think 10 or maybe even 9 fantasy points either of those last 4 weeks. Still finished as the wide receiver 9 in PPR. He was still great the majority of the season. 30 years old. I don't think that I don't necessarily care too much about the age for Stephon Diggs type of player, if that makes sense. I still think that 2-3 years are on the table for Diggs. But moreover, the value, I think you nailed it there. I think that you can go get Diggs I think you could go get him for a mid-second. And I think that's pretty good. You disagree, Evan?
I don't think anybody's giving him up for a mid-second. I think you're looking at the 111 range to be able to go get Stephon Diggs this offseason.
I think he's in that weird spot where if you send the 201,
I don't think I could do a first. I think I could do that.
If you send the 201, they'll laugh at you, and if you send the 112, they'll accept it. It's such a funny thing that we do.
Okay. Yeah. I don't know about giving up a first. I think that's where I get a little wary, but I think those are solid arguments nonetheless. Michael Pittman was. I'll go ahead and take the flag. I completely missed on Pittman.
Kenny Galladay 2.0.
I was calling him the next Kenny Galladay. And he showed me up. Look, I mean, we still have time, right? Maybe he falls off next season and he's still the Kenny Galladay. I don't know.
To be fair, we called him that because the player profiler metrics were identical.
That's true. Bradley. What do you have to say
saying.
for yourself?
As long as the player comp wasn't there, I think we're safe.
Okay, yeah, no, that's fair. It wasn't. All right. Well, great. Those are two good ones. Sorry, where were we at? Mike next?
Yeah. Screw it. Let's go two at a time and try and close this out in the next 10 minutes. So Deebo Samuel is scoring 17 fantasy points per game right now. Are we sure he's a tier below Ayuk and Hill and those guys? I think that he might be in the B tier. Like, I think he might be above Waddle. I think he might be above Smith. And I'm a known Deebo hater. Like, I thought that he was overvalued all season. But he's in the system. When he's on the field, you're playing him. He has week-winning spike weeks. I think that's that.
Yeah, I don't know. I hear you. It just, I don't know. With Deebo, it really just feels like kind of like with George Kittle, he has his games. It's kind of like all the 49ers, to be honest. So I get what you're saying. Top of C tier, I could get down with that. In the same tier as Tyreek Hill, I just don't.
He has. So, not including game shortened for injury. Wide receiver 13, wide receiver 11, wide receiver 1, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 10, wide receiver 9, wide receiver 12, a couple of injury shortened ones, a wide receiver 39, and a wide receiver 17. And the 39 was 9.5 points. Like, that's.
He also he also has 5 games in which he had 4 or less receptions, not counting the injury shorted game against Cleveland. And he has 1 game this year that he didn't even have a single reception.
Yeah, but he still scored 0.85 fantasy points. So elite floor. Didn't give you a 0.
Is that the measurement? As long as it's not a 0, it's elite.
Look, man, I like Kyle Pitts, so anything more than 0, I get excited.
Yeah.
The way I look at Deebo is you're counting on the rushing touchdowns. If the rushing touchdowns aren't there, Deebo is not a wide receiver 1, not a wide receiver 2. He's a flex play. If you just take away those rushing touchdowns, which you don't expect to happen, but it's there.
I think that's what we're looking at, though, too. Like I said, I think the C tier is a large majority of guys where you're like preseason, you're like, oh, my wide receiver 2 is elite with any of these C tier guys. But ended up being like more of like you're happy if they're your flex, and I think Deebo lands in the same spot personally.
Yeah, Deebo is if we're discounting some wide receivers here in the rankings based on injury history, the injury history has to be accounted for. A 28-year-old Deebo Samuel who has a history of soft tissue issues throughout his career, and they've led to long-term issues for him to be a regular weekly producer. So in a win now scenario, Deebo should be a top 15 wide receiver. In a Dynasty startup, there's no way he's scratching the top 15.
Fair.
Big Ordy 66 did not like the dig selection, by the way.
Thank you, Uncle Steve.
That's all right. That's all right.
I'm going to throw one more out there real quick. This should be a layup. Do the Falcons get a new quarterback next year?
Yes. And I'm going to say
Ryan Tannehill. Ryan Tannehill.
Oh, man.
Wilson.
Then Drake London's in C.
Arthur Smith, Ryan Tannehill.
Is Russell Wilson better than Taylor Heineke?
If it's Justin Fields, he's supported Cortland Sutton. And do we think Drake London's better than Cortland Sutton?
Yes, he is better.
Yeah, he is better. Yeah.
Russ loves tight ends, and he loves the play action.
Look. I've said this before on the show.
This is the perfect fit.
I've said this before on the show. I just think that if you are counting on the Atlanta Falcons to fix their quarterback situation, I don't know what Kool-Aid you're drinking, but I want some because it probably tastes really good. They haven't done it. They haven't. Since Matt Ryan left, they have not taken any steps to actually remedying their terrible, terrible QB play.
But this is where you find the edge. You buy the guys before that happens. I'm buying Drake London all summer.
In any other situation that's not in Atlanta, I would agree with you.
Cool. All right, well, then you can throw him in the D tier, but I think he's in C-ish.
Look, Drake London pure talent wise, sure. Into the C tier.
Let's
I'll
go.
concede it. I'll
All
concede
right.
it. That's fine.
We got 5 minutes. Let's fly.
Okay, so my pick now.
Yes, sir.
Well, this will be one that I'm sure Mike will enjoy.
no.
Why do we not have George Pickens here?
Let's go. He should be
It's very
with
simple
Olave.
why we don't have George Pickens there.
Tell me why. Tell me why.
Oh my gosh. What are we talking about? There's no quarterback that can throw a football in Pittsburgh.
Neither on Atlanta, my
or
man.
New Orleans.
Well,
He's
What are
scoring
we
the same
doing?
amount of
What are
points
we
as Chris
talking
Olave.
about?
It's the same age.
I am not making the case that Drake London should be in the C tier. I would argue Drake London should be in the D tier, if even on a tier.
Evan.
Oh wow! Not even on it. Okay.
Who is scoring more points
Jeez.
per game, Chris Olave or George Pickens? It's Olave by like
Olave.
0.1 point. They're the same age. If you have Olave in B tier, then you can smell my farts. We're putting Pickens here.
What I am seeing for Pickens right now is that Mason Rudolph is balling out.
Hilarious.
Mason
Rudolph
know.
was the
Look,
key.
I don't know if that'll continue into 2024. I don't know if Mason Rudolph will be the starting quarterback for the Steelers in 2024. But if they do anything, if they go get a Russell Wilson, if they go get a Justin Fields, then it is going to be better than Mason Rudolph. And Mason Rudolph right now is making George Pickens look like a top 10 receiver in the NFL.
Let's go.
That's where I'm at. George
Bradley's
Pickens.
just laughing. Bradley's never.
I
love Bradley just laughing.
I think that George Pickens is a buy, but I can't get this high on him. Like I love his value. I think that there is an edge to be had, but I think this is too far of a swing for me.
Okay. I think that's fine and fair. What I'm foreseeing is just up on the stocks for George Pickens going forward. But I do agree with you where, like, when I'm looking at the rest of the list, I see arguments for other guys. So let's keep trucking. We have a couple more minutes here. I think we can maybe do one more each if we go fast. Bradley, you got one?
Oh, I can I knock out two? Might as well just knock out two.
Do it. Yeah, let's get it.
Sure.
Yeah.
One is a win now, and one is a long-term asset. Devontae Adams needs to be in your win now. He is still absolutely crushing for fantasy, and it doesn't matter who his freaking quarterback's Aiden O'Connell. Like, come on. It's Aiden freaking O'Connell, and he is crushing. Like, he looks like he's 26. I know he had one bad week, whatever. He just came off 21 targets, and we are ranking this man behind Drake London. Come on. Anyway, sorry. Anyway, he is a win now asset. You want to buy Devontae Adams in Dynasty because his perceived value is so much lower. He's 31 years old. I don't care. He's good. He's going to age like fine wine, and it's beautiful. So give me Devontae Adams, especially for your win now teams. And then the other is Rashee Rice, connected to Patrick Mahomes. We already heard about the fall off of Travis Kelce. Kelce isn't even a top 5 quarterback in terms of best ball value this year. Hunter Henry is number 7. Kelce is 6. Okay, Hunter Henry was giving you what Travis Kelce did this year.
There's a Hunter Henry lore behind this.
Anyways,
my
long
man.
story short is that Rashee Rice deserves to be in this conversation given his ties to Patrick Mahomes. He just had a 120-yard game, and Mahomes is not playing well. Like, the rest of the offense isn't playing well. It's Rice and Pacheco, and that's it. So, and Rice is clearly the best wide receiver of all. So, anyways.
I love it.
He's leading the NFL in yards after the catch.
All right, we got 1 minute.
As a rookie.
Close it out.
One minute. Last 2 rookie wide receivers, Jordan Addison and Zay Flowers.
Deal. Close it.
Zay Flowers is the only wide receiver that you want on that Ravens offense. Period. Done. Stick a fork in it. That's the end.
I love it. I won't argue with you. I mean, Zay Flowers over Jordan Addison. Anyone agree with me there?
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. Groovy. Well, great, man. I mean, we are right at the end here. So, I want to thank everyone for tuning in. We had a great viewership, lots of awesome comments. So thank you guys. Thank you so much, Bradley, for joining us, man. It was a blast.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Make sure you guys are subscribing to the channel. I know some people like to view, but make sure you guys are subscribing here. The Dynasty you guys have been crushing it in this episode and also, bringing the heat. So I appreciate it. Thanks for having me on. Viewers, subscribe to the channel. It means a lot to us content creators as we're getting going. So yes, absolutely. Hit the like, but definitely subscribe. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Of course, man. Really appreciate that. And we'll definitely have to have you on again. But until next time, everybody, thank you for joining us and have a great night. Goodbye. Go get Dubby. Bye.
Bye, Dubby.